Welcome to the What I Wish I Knew After Pregnancy Loss podcast. I am your host, Shana Southern. I am an angel mum, a rainbow mum, a pregnancy loss practitioner, and trauma-informed coach. I created the Institute of Healing Through Pregnancy Loss out of my own experience with loss in the hopes to provide understanding and healing, educating people on pregnancy loss, and creating more women or men in trained support roles. In this podcast, I hope to shed light on what I wish I knew in relation to pregnancy loss, opening up the conversation, breaking the stigma, and bringing real-life stories plus guest experts. Thank you for being here with me today, and let's dive into today's episode. One in 4 pregnancies will result in miscarriage. 1 in 8 women will experience infertility. 1 in 100 women will experience recurrent miscarriage. And 1 in 160 births end in stillbirth. Have you been wanting to make a difference in the lives of women or men who have experienced pregnancy loss because you can see so many suffering in silence, but you just don't know how? Collectively, we can change how bereaved parents can access mental, physical, and emotional support after their experience. There is a lot of women with unhealed trauma, and there is a huge gap in the current support system when it comes to bereaved parents' recovery after loss. There are too many women and men suffering in silence. The Pregnancy Loss Practitioner Certification is a worldwide, one-of-a-kind program that gives you proven methods designed for healthcare professionals, medical staff, midwives, nurses, doulas, birth workers, coaches, and angel parents alike. The Pregnancy Loss Practitioner Certification is bridging that gap. It will give you a proven support structure to follow and education specific to pregnancy loss, created by a loss mum. It is creating more education specifically for loss so that you can enhance your service and become the point of difference. Or you can create the support that you so desperately needed in your healing after loss. This is the next level of growth and expansion you have been searching for. So does this sound like something that you have been searching for? Let's explore this more together. You can head to the episode show notes where you'll find the program application, or direct message me on Instagram and let's open up the conversation in how you can use this education. You have a gift, and I look forward to supporting you and witnessing you bring your gift to the world, healing and transforming women's lives. Welcome, beautiful souls, to the What I Wish I Knew After Pregnancy Loss podcast. Today, I have with me the beautiful Charlie Dice. So she's a 35-year-old married, child-free woman. She lives in Pennsylvania with her loving husband and 2 Bernese mountain dogs. Charlie and her husband struggled with infertility for 6 years before making the decision a year ago to stop trying and live as a family of 2. After struggling to find resources on how to live a happy, fulfilled life after infertility, she decided to become what she couldn't find. Now she is a coach to women and a few men, teaching them to accept their child-free status and move forward, living a joyful, abundant life. Welcome to the show, Charlie.
Thank you, Sharna. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
I'm really excited to have you as well because, I know this is a really, really important topic to bring to the table, to bring to the world, to bring awareness to, because, when we are children, we kind of imagine this life of, I'll fall pregnant, I'll have a family, this will be my future. And then when you get to that point in your life and you're trying and it's not happening, that future is really hard to disconnect from. It's something that you still want so badly. And when it's not happening the way that you planned it to, it can be a very hard transition mentally and physically to, look forward to a life that may not have children in it. And, being that you've done that, you've been there, you can speak from experience. It's what you have to share is very, very valuable and very important. And I'm just very grateful that you can be here and you're able to talk about that with us.
Yeah, I would love to. I guess I'll just start with a little bit of my story so that your listeners kind of get to know me. Like you said, I'm childless, just me and my husband and my dogs. When I was a little girl, like you said, you normally envision what your life is going to look like as an adult, and you see this picture in your head. And for me, it was a little bit different because actually growing up, I honestly never thought I'd have children. I was just one of those girls that, I was very into my hobbies. I was very into school. I wanted to have a career, but I always in the back of my mind, assumed that I would have a family. And so it wasn't something that was on the front of my mind a lot. But then when I got married when I was 25. And my husband and I talked, and he was very aware that, I just wasn't quite ready to start a family yet. And he was fine with that. We ended up building our own house and we bought some land here, and, we kind of built the life that we always dreamed of. And then when I hit 30, we kind of looked at each other one night and we're like, "Yeah, I think we should probably start." It's we're kind of getting to the other side of this. And all of our siblings had had children one right after the other, no problems. Like just, everything went very smoothly. They fell pregnant very quickly and easily. And so we had always used protection because we thought, well, that's going to be us. And we don't want to have, an unplanned pregnancy that we weren't quite ready for. We could have handled it, but you know how that goes. So when we stopped using protection and started trying, we thought, okay, well, it's going to happen like within the first month. And obviously it didn't. And then, it goes 6 months, 8 months, a year, and we didn't have one positive pregnancy test. And, you Google things and you kind of go down the rabbit hole and you're like, is this normal? And, we knew that it was fairly normal for folks to not fall pregnant, the first year of trying, but we were concerned with our ages. I knew it after 35, women tend to have some issues, or at least are higher risk for issues during pregnancy. So we kept trying. And then in August of 2020 was the first time after trying for 3 years that I fell pregnant, and I got that positive test. And honestly, I was really terrified because, I was like, oh my gosh, is it actually positive? It finally happened. And then you kind of sit there and just stare at it and you're like, well, now what? Like, this is, I guess this is happening. And then your mind immediately goes to what your life is going to look like in 9 months with this baby in your arms and how it's going to change. And, you get very excited. And so that was kind of us for the first few weeks. And then one weekend in October, my husband was off hunting in another neighboring county to us. And so I was home by myself and I noticed that I was starting to bleed. And I thought, okay, what I know that that's also somewhat normal in the first trimester for some women. So I didn't think much of it. And a few hours went by and it just kept getting worse and worse. And I thought I probably should, at least call my doctor and see if this is something that I should be concerned about. So I called them, and of course it was on a weekend. So, I got the emergency line and they said, well, you should probably just go to the ER. So I, called my husband. He was an hour and a half away. I said, it's probably fine. I'll just drive myself in, it'll be fine. I'll be in and out and I'll let you know when I get back home. So I drive myself into the ER, and I'll never forget like walking in there. It was during COVID, so they had a different setup for how you checked in, and everybody was very segregated, and you had to walk up to this little table. And I'll never forget that there was a nurse working at the triage table, and I knew her personally. Like she had gone to the same gym that I had gone to. And she knew from just, us talking at the gym that my husband and I have been trying. And so I walked in, and of course I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to tell this person, that I think I might be miscarrying or could be, and I don't even know how to say that. So I just remember, she asked me, and she said later on, she said, I could just tell by the look on your face, like I knew why you were there and I knew, you know, what you were going to tell me. And so she was so gracious about it. And she just, checked me in and I went back. And long story short, they ended up not finding a heartbeat anymore. And that was at 10 weeks. But they said, your body does take a few weeks to know that it's not pregnant anymore. So they said it probably, had died at about 7 or 8 weeks. And, I was by myself. I was so distraught when I went to the ER that I'd left my cell phone in my car. And so I ended up being in there for about 4 hours, couldn't talk to anybody, was there by myself, and I just remember they, said, well, now you need to just toss this baby on your own. And I thought, what does that even mean? Like, I don't even know what that means. So I went to my car, had about 20 missed calls from my husband because obviously he was very, concerned and wanted to know what had gone on. And I remember I didn't even call him on the way home. I just drove home and just sat there for a while because I didn't even know what to say. I didn't know what to say to myself, let alone somebody else. And I thought, what happens now? Like, what is my body going to do? What am I going to see? Like, what is this going to feel like? And I just was so numb, and eventually, like that Monday, I had to go into the OB's office and they ended up doing a DNC because they said, I was too far along to just pass it naturally. And they didn't think it was going to be safe because they thought that I would bleed too much. So I ended up having the DNC. And then it, kind of like we talked about, you know, before when you and I just having conversations, it took my body about 8 months after that initial miscarriage to even get to the point where I was having normal cycles again. And I was, being able to predict how long they were going to last and, all of that. And just feeling, it sounds really odd, but just feeling not pregnant anymore, like the bloating and the morning sickness and all, like it drug on for 8 months after that first one. And I was so confused and, just didn't want to try again for that period of time. But we eventually did, after that, we started trying again and never got another positive test for about another 6 months. And so when we got the second positive test, that one I miscarried at 8 weeks. And so that one, I did class naturally, which was a whole different experience than the DNC. And still, it was hard to process like what was even happening. So then we decided like we should go, seek treatment and see what's going on. So we ended up going to an infertility clinic near where we live and went through extensive testing and ended up finding out that, my husband and I had significant issues reproductively. So my eggs, when they aged them, they were actually the age of someone who was 50 years old. And I was 33 at the time. And then my husband, actually, they tested his samples and they said, they had never seen anything like it where he did multiple samples and each time his morphology and motility came back at 0%. They said normally we see at least something. So we did end up going through, 2 rounds of IVF just to see if it would work. I mean, at this point we were desperate to try to just get another positive pregnancy. Neither of those worked, unfortunately. And so I ended up having one more natural conception, and that was a year ago. And that over Christmas, I miscarried that one. And that was at 6 weeks. And at that point, I remember looking at my husband saying, I can't do this anymore. Every month that we tried, it was me getting my hopes up, but then also in the back of my mind, knowing that it probably wasn't going to work. And then I was just going to feel like a failure. And I just remember that utter hopelessness of it. And I have suffered from mental health issues most of my adult life as well. I've had major depressive disorder been diagnosed for about 15 years now. So my mental health is very important to me and preserving it. And my husband obviously knows this about me. So when we had the conversation, he said, yeah, I just can't see you like this anymore. I was essentially like a shell of my former self. And I thought, I don't even know. I mean, it's hard to describe because it's like your body won't do the thing that it was created to do or built to do. And, you look around and everybody else is falling pregnant and it's so easy and they have these happy families now. And it's like, why not us? Why not me? And you know, go through all this self-pity and everything. But, we knew that financially, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, in every way you possibly can, we were just tapped out. We both agreed like we just need to figure this out. And so I remember calling my doctor at both the infertility clinic and my regular OB, and I said to them, we just can't continue anymore. And they were supportive, but on the other hand, they also just said to us, okay, thanks, we'll see you later. And I thought, is that it? Like, is that what happens when people, say that to you? Like, it was kind of like, okay, we'll chat soon at some other, but I don't know. So I just remember getting off the phone and turning to my husband and going, well, okay, now what? Like, now what? And I immediately started looking for resources to help me and to help him process like the journey that we had just gone through. And then this kind of immediate cutoff from one part of our lives to the next. Like at some point yesterday, we were trying to have a family, and then today we're not, and it was that just black and white that really sent me like into a tailspin. And I kind of went down the rabbit hole trying to find online, resources that I could use to help me and help him. And I just didn't find anything. And I just found it very odd because I thought there's so many of us out there, women and men, who suffer from infertility and don't get a rainbow baby from it, so we do end up with childlessness, and I thought, how can the medical community or the mental health community just kind of let us like kind of out there on our own island, sort of like that's what it felt like. It felt like we were just on our own island trying to fend for ourselves. So that's kind of where, it's kind of a long backstory, but that's kind of how I ended up getting into coaching, is because, over the next 2 years, I just did my own research and found my own, kind of made my own resources, developed my own frameworks that got my husband and I through it. And I started thinking, well, I know there's other people out there in our situation. Like maybe this would work for them too. And I had gone to therapy and I had been in therapy for years for, my mental health and other issues. But my therapist, even though she was a woman, she had never gone through infertility. She had never suffered a miscarriage. She had never had any issues having children. So there was always that disconnect. I really like her as a person, but we just couldn't relate 100% to each other. And I think for those of us that go through infertility, I mean, you can chime in too. I mean, therapy is obviously a pillar of healing to a certain extent, but unless you've actually walked in someone's shoes or had that experience, it's never going to be the ultimate fix. It's never going to make you whole. And yeah, so I just decided, well, I have taught myself all these things and it's worked for my husband and I, and maybe, it can work for others too. So that's kind of how I got to this point.
Yeah, I want to thank you for sharing everything that you have as well. There's so many different aspects to your story. And, I'm grateful that you were able to touch on all of those different elements of it as well, because I know someone that's listening in will be able to relate to that. And just what you mentioned about the therapy as well, like It's the very common route for medical professionals to go, okay, go see a therapist. And in my experience and in the experience that, I've supported other lost mums through their life after loss, therapy was great, but always left something missing. They were always left, there was something that they needed that was more than therapy that they didn't know, and they didn't know what they needed until they,
Right.
I didn't know what I needed. I was walking away going, that was great, but now what? Like I still need something more. I still need more support, but I don't know what that is. And then obviously when I was able to create that support like you have as well, when the clients came to me, when the women came to me, they said this is what was missing. And I think it is absolutely that lived experience that the person that you're talking to absolutely knows what you're going through. And it's not to say that either there's only one solution. Like, it's about creating you can create a team of support people around you.
Absolutely.
Therapy could be one of those, but definitely don't just rely on one form of support. There is absolutely, like, there's yourself and someone that has gone through that experience, someone that you can talk to that absolutely knows to the core of them what you're navigating, what you're going through, what those emotions are, what those thoughts are, those feelings and sensations that you're feeling, and be able to receive the validation from the person that you're actually talking to, as opposed to someone that is sort of a bit more generalized. It's funny. I always go back to this, like when I talk about, finding that person that can support you, because it's about a broken bone. I broke my finger when I was playing basketball, and I was like, I don't want to spend money and go to a hand specialist because obviously they were more money. I'll just go to a general surgeon. And someone said to me, they're like, a general surgeon though doesn't know the ins and outs of, your hands. Like it knows obviously the structure of a hand, and they're generally operating on any body part, as opposed to a hand specialist who has done their surgeon training and then they've specialized in that particular area. And they know that's all they do. They operate on hands all the time. That's, their passion.
Exactly. Yeah.
I was like, okay, I would rather someone who specializes in what I need, that does that one thing over and over and over and knows that inside and out, to be that person that operated on me, as opposed to the surgeon that kind of operated on any body part that, someone presented with. And every time I go back to even my healing and recovery journey mentally and physically, I always make sure that I get the support that specializes in the kind of result that I want. And that was the same with therapy. I was like, okay, I need more. A therapist to me was very generalized. How can I get that specific support that I'm after? And that's where the difference is, like in terms of what you offer and in terms of what I offer. It's the specific support. It's the stuff that you know inside and out that someone else won't, because you've lived it. And, especially trying to shift. And I think that'd be one of the hardest things. Is, it's funny, part of your story actually really does resonate with me, because I was, as much as I loved and envisioned having children in my life, through my 20s, I was like, nope, I just want to be 20. I just want to have fun. I want to party. I want to do all of the things.
Yeah.
And then it wasn't until I turned 30 that it was almost like a switch in my brain. And I was like, okay, now I'm ready. And we tried for like 5 years. And I fell pregnant when I was 35 or 34. And I think I had her when I was 35. And I was like, in my mind though, if that was never going to happen, and I have supported women going through that transition as well. But it
Mm-hmm.
hasn't been my experience. So it's really hard for me to be able to tap into those emotions and those thought processes that you would have actually had to go through to actually get to that decision and be okay with it. Like there'd be, you know, I think that would be the hardest part, is making the decision and then being able to be okay with it, so that when you are looking forward to your future, you know, it's full of joy and excitement still, as opposed to resentment or regret.
And I'll be honest with you. I mean, one of the things that I hear and that I work with the women, that come to me a lot on is exactly that, making that decision, because that is by far the hardest part of the whole process. And even myself, I know during my story, I said one night I just turned to my husband and said, I can't do this anymore. But what I didn't say then is, for 6 months prior to that, in my own head, I'm thinking, I can't do this anymore, but I don't want to give up. And I don't want to make that, just that cut and say, okay, that's it. It was like a daily, hourly, almost minute to minute thing that was running through my head that was like, do I want to stop trying? No, I don't want to stop trying. I really need to stop trying. It was just a constant, and that's exhausting. And that's one of the first things that I help, women in my coaching program, is actually getting to the point and working through that internal dialogue to get to say, yes, I am okay with making that decision. I'm not necessarily okay, but I'm okay making that decision. And that's a huge hurdle for them to get over. And I find that once they say that out loud and put that into the universe and manifest it, then we can move forward with some of the other emotions and mindset, and looking at your life, because like you said, it is scary to look at your life and go, okay, well, when I'm 70, what's it going to look like? I'm going to be by myself. Or when I'm 50, like what's it, so actually getting people to the point where they say the words out loud that we're done trying and we're going to be a family of two or even one, whatever the case is. That's definitely what I see most people struggling with. And that's the thing that you have to do before you can really worry about any of the other emotions.
Mm. I think that that moment where you're saying it out loud is admitting that and acknowledging that finality of that part of your life. And I think that I could agree, like just me sort of trying to tap into that, that it would be one of the hardest things because, and like you said, you sort of, your mind it's that to and fro, like you keep going back to, no, I'm done. I can't go through this anymore. Oh, but what if I try again? And what if that one is successful? And I think that that what if question, like that goes through your mind, would be one of the hardest ones to, turn the volume down on.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And, I work through that a lot too. I actually have a whole, guide on just the what ifs, like each question, the most common ones down to some that you probably don't even think of, because I think that is the hardest part about making the decision, is not only the what ifs, but the regret, the anticipated regret that you think you're going to have. And it's interesting because as I was learning how to get my husband and I through this ourselves, I learned that most folks are familiar with like the Kubler-Ross 5 stages of grief model. But in actuality, infertility and childlessness, you actually want to follow a different model, because the 5 stages of grief in the Kubler-Ross model don't really encompass what most people feel when they're in this situation of childlessness. So I actually use a different model that was created by someone named John Schneider. And his is more of limits versus gains. And I won't go into it a whole lot, but essentially it breaks down to trying to limit your awareness of your losses and turn those losses into gains and seeing them in your mind as opportunities instead of regret, pain, grief, because we as childless people do have different opportunities than someone that does have children. And that should be a positive. That should be viewed as a positive. And so I help people kind of understand that, you don't have to follow this set model of grief. What you're going through is so specific, like you talked about with your hand, it's so specialized that you really need to, take a look at this other set of, I don't want to say rules, but set of, beliefs that more fits what we're feeling and what we're going through when we're trying to make that transition. So that's something that I think surprises people, after we talk, is they haven't looked at it in that term before because nobody has said that to them. And I know my therapist, I mentioned it to her when I first learned it, and she had no idea who it, she had never heard of it. But that goes back to the point of what you said, generalized, it wasn't even on her bookshelf. She was taught by the book, and that's not in, the traditional book. So it's something that, like you said, unless you've walked in those shoes and tried to find a way out, it was different than what everyone else was trying to tell you would work for you, you're not going to find it.
I love how you just said that too, where if you talk to most people, they'll tell you this is the way, where because you've been through it, you've found a different path and you found different ways that actually supported you, different ways that you were able to shift your perspective, where I could easily feel selfish if I wanted to do something and not have children and go, well, actually, I can do this now and not have a child. How that could, if you don't get the right support, you could feel that sense of selfishness as well. It'll be like, but I actually wanted to have children. So then, and then it could be that, again, that battle in your mind. But to receive the specialized support to help you shift that perspective in a really healthy way, so that when you do look forward to your future and these other opportunities that can be available to you without, having a child in your life, and being able to view that as a positive as opposed to a negative and that feeling of selfishness.
And one of the biggest things too, once that I found and that the women I work with find, is that, once you have essentially come out on the other side, then you actually invite children back into your life, because you're no longer triggered by your losses that you had experienced. I can go to a baby shower and not feel sadness and isolation and jealousy for the mom to be, whereas before I had worked through all this, I just essentially turned down baby shower invites because it was so triggering for me. And, we have 9 nieces and nephews, and I'm the only woman in my immediate family and my husband's immediate family that does not have children. And so it was very isolating for me to participate in family functions or even have a conversation with the adults of the family because it was all centered around children. And I, I just didn't know what to say. I couldn't relate. They had never gone through what I had gone through. And, once you work through all that and come out, in a more positive mindset, after that, like I've talked to them now more than I ever did before. And I feel a part of the family again. And people feel like they can actually talk to me about their children without walking on eggshells, so to speak, because they know that I'm okay. Like, and I don't want to minimize or trivialize someone's emotions to the point where, like, I still have days where I get sad, or I think about the 3 babies that I lost, and I would never ever tell someone that that's going to go away 100% because it won't. That's not what I do as a life after infertility coach. You're always going to have feelings like that. But what you can do is you can get to the point where you look at that, and you can actually have positive emotions about it. And somebody, that I had interviewed on my podcast previously, she said something that I'll never forget. She said, when I die, don't mourn me because I'm going to get to go see my babies in heaven. And I'm so excited for that. And I thought, that's perfect. Like, I'm happy now because I know that I can live fulfilled life here on earth. And then I also know that when I die, I'm going to get to be the mom that I didn't get to be here on earth. And so it's just like a freeing perspective to have that I just want to help other women, and men get to.
I think that's one, I want to acknowledge what she said, because I think that's a beautiful way to look at it as well. A beautiful perspective that it's not, when you die, it's not like your journey isn't finished. It just allows you to
Yeah.
start a new chapter in a different realm. And you get to do all of the things that you didn't get a chance to do here.
Yeah.
So I think that's a beautiful way to actually view it. And I also wanted to note as well how you've mentioned a few times, obviously, that, men and the infertility journey as well, like they are often forgotten about and often overlooked in the whole, even in pure loss, like if their, partners are going through losses and multiple losses, but also the infertility journey. And, he's been there with you to make that decision with you as well, to not have children in his life. And it's a big mindset shift for them as well, even though men, it's not necessarily something that they envision as children to have a family, but some do.
Right.
Some have that vision and, but also they adopt, they love you and they adopt your vision and what you want to create together as a couple and on like moving forward, that if that includes children, they then get attached to that vision. When it doesn't go to plan, their vision is shattered as well. So, I like that you acknowledge that for the men as well.
Yeah. Because I actually have one male client right now. And while he himself does not have any infertility issues from a medical standpoint, what I'm helping him with is actually to help his wife, who is the one that, does have medical reproductive issues. And, when we first met, he said, I just don't know how to help her. He said, I think as a man, I need to be the strong one and I need to be the rock and I need to not show any emotion. And then that's going to help her know that she can come to me. But he said, she's isolating herself. She's going further away instead of coming towards me, and we worked through, as a man, the woman will react to your emotions. And so the more you are sensitive and show what you're really feeling, the more it will help her. And the more then you two can come together and really make an informed decision. Again, going back to the decision of, are we done or are we not? And you have to know what the other is feeling in order to make that mutual decision. So again, even if a man doesn't have medical issues reproductively, like my husband does or did, there's still support out there for them, even if it's coming from a woman, because a lot of times that's what they want. They want to know how to better relate to their spouse to help them through it. And that was really interesting to me. It was something that I never thought I would work with men, because I thought, well, how can I relate to that, or how could they relate to me, I guess. And so that's been a really fulfilling part of this for me, is just kind of seeing that perspective as well. But yeah, I want men to know that there is support out there for you. You need to feel what you feel and you need to express that to somebody. If that's not a coach, a therapist, or, like you said in the beginning, just find that person that you can relate to, or you can at least put those words out into the universe too.
I think it's important to, just to find that person, whether you are a male or a female, navigating this so that you can put a voice to the emotions, put a voice to the feelings, be able to verbalize what it is that's actually going on inside of you. Because it's not until we can actually voice it, when we do voice it, it gives it that release. Like when we try to silence it, push it down, it just stays like this tornado kind of thing, just like whirling around inside of you. And it doesn't ever find release. It doesn't find that resolution. But when you can start to verbalize what it is that you're feeling, it can start to help you process what's going on. And also, I think sometimes when you're voicing it, you're almost, counseling yourself. Like sometimes when you can
Yeah.
verbalize it, you can almost coach yourself through what it is that you're actually feeling as well.
Yeah. And unfortunately, infertility tends to be, I mean, I think behind money, infertility and family tend to be the second biggest cause of divorce in couples. And I know my husband and I mean, if we hadn't have figured it out on our own and come together then to voice what we were feeling and what we had learned, I don't know if we would still be married. It's such a visceral pain, especially when you both have issues. You're both feeling so much guilt and so much even resentment towards the other person. It is really sad because, I think in the infertility space, we do see a lot of divorce or failed relationships because it does tear people apart.
Mm. And understandably too, because like you said, you
Yeah.
can look at the other person and almost blame. There can be so much resentment and sometimes hatred and anger and blame towards another person because you're like, well, you did this, or, you can start to point fingers. And even, that infertility part didn't really play into my relationship so much. But after our loss, that was where the communication broke down. And, for me, I can relate to that in terms of we didn't verbalize what we were feeling, and we fought so much until we got to that point where we could tell each other what was happening.
Hmm.
So how much that communication is so important if you do want to work through it together, if you do want to come together.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's just I've been, working with people now for about a year, kind of behind the scenes. I've just recently, as you know, like kind of gotten into the social media aspect of it and podcasting and kind of advertising. It's mostly just been me talking to these people, one on one. And so I'm excited. I'm excited to, bring it to more folks, or at least bring awareness to it, that there are people out there to support you in this stage of your life, in this stage of your journey. You know, you just need to find them.
Mm. I do want to touch on what you actually do. So how do you support people that are navigating this part of their life?
Yeah. So I currently have a one-on-one coaching program that consists of, actually working with me on a monthly basis. And I have different packages that I offer depending on how much support you would like or would need. And then I also am currently working on an automated course that you can go through. It's, self-paced, self-guided, you know, talking one-on-one is still too painful for you. I want you to have that option. And then I just recently started my podcast, the Life Beyond Infertility podcast, and that's been really fun. There's been some, struggles with that because I'm not technical at all, so I'm kind of muddling my way through that. But I also have the podcast available to people if they just want, a completely free option to just get support that way as well.
Yeah. And it's such a beautiful way to tap into support as a free alternative because they get
Yeah,
to access
absolutely.
you and they get to access the people that you get on as well. So,
I always offer a free 30-minute call to anybody that wants to see if, because I want to see if I can help you. I don't want to cause you any more pain or grief than you're already experiencing. So we have that call to just kind of get to know each other, and I get to know your situation. And if I feel like I'm a good fit and I can help, and you feel like I can help, we establish that then, and then we can kind of transition them from there. So that's always an option for folks too, as well, but completely free.
yeah, beautiful. And I will make sure that I can supply these things for them to go and check that out as well. where can people find you? Because you are on social media now.
I think like some days I don't even know where I'm at, but I'm trying. Yeah, so they can find me on my website. It's www.charliedice.com. And I know it'll be in the show notes if you need the spelling, but I also am on Instagram. My handle is at life beyond infertility _ C as in cat, D as in dog. And then I do have a free Facebook group, and I have the podcast, the Life Beyond Infertility podcast.
Amazing. And yes, I will link all of those in as well. So you should be able to easily click and find Charlie.
Yeah, hopefully. Fingers crossed.
And just before we finish up, what's one thing you wish you knew after pregnancy loss and or infertility?
Yeah, that's a hard question because there's a lot of things that I wish people had either said to me or that I knew. But I think the biggest thing is that no matter what happens, either way, it's right. If you have a family, it's right. And if you don't have a family, it's still right. You know, you're the only one that gets to live your life, and you're the only one that gets to decide if you're going to be happy in this life. So either route you go and whatever your life ends up looking like, it's right for you.
I think that's a beautiful thing to finish on as well, just to really tap into yourself and know that you are doing the right thing for you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Charlie, for being a part of the What I Wish I Knew After Pregnancy Loss podcast.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I'm so glad you were on my podcast previously, and I'm so glad I could return the favor. And I'm so grateful that you reached out to have me on.
I'm grateful too. It's such like I said at the beginning, it's such a valuable topic to bring awareness to. So I am grateful that we've connected, the universe connected us, and we've been able to share our magic.
Yeah, thank you again for allowing me the space to talk to your audience, and I hope it helps someone.
You're welcome. Thank you to all that have listened in. If this episode was valuable to you, I invite you to leave a review on Apple Podcasts, and I look forward to supporting you on the next episode. Thank you for listening in with me today. I hope you found this episode helpful. If you did, I would absolutely love to hear from you. Take a screenshot of this episode, share it to social media, and tag me at Institute of Healing _PL. I love seeing what is resonating with you right now. If you want to chat further, I invite you to connect with me through Instagram. Head over and follow my Instagram account, send me a DM, and let's open the communication. If you want to know more about how you can be the support for others, head to the show notes and fill out the application form for the Pregnancy Loss Practitioner certification. I want to also note here that what I share within the episodes is not medical advice. If you need further support, please consult your doctor. Thank you again. Much love to you. Be gentle with yourself, and I look forward to supporting you on the next episode.